Hello and welcome to my channel and my podcast, Kate Sharon True Crime. My name is Kate and here I talk about true crime, mysteries, history and anything that interests me. Please remember to show your support by liking this video, subscribing to my channel and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Let's dive into another true crime story. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about Albert Fish. He was one very disturbed, messed up individual. So there's a warning. This story talks about SA towards minors and just a whole lot of really terrible things. So with that, let's jump in. Okay, so Hamilton Fish, aka Albert, was born in 1870 in Washington, D.C. His elderly father passed away when he was only 5, leaving him and his siblings to be raised by their mentally unstable mum, who was unable to handle the stresses of being a single parent, which is nothing to be ashamed of because being a single parent is freaking hard. I've just had my 3-year-old homesick for like a week and he's finally back at kindy, but I'm tired. So sadly, the challenge of raising her kids alone led her to sending her children off to an orphanage. So at some point, Albert had changed his name to Albert in an attempt to escape the bullying from his classmates who would tease him, and they referred to him as Ham and Eggs because his name was Hamilton. I think Hamilton's a cool name. So during his time at the orphanage, harsh physical punishment was a thing that was regular, and they felt like they had to beat the children to keep them in line. Horrible. So Albert was an interesting child and actually enjoyed being punished. Yeah, he would purposely act out so that he would receive punishment. So Albert's mum, she suffered from severe bouts of depression as well as hallucinations, which rendered her unfit to take care of her kids. Even so, at the age of 10, Albert was returned to her care. So shortly after being reunited, it became very clear to Albert's mum that her son that she just got back was not the same one that she had surrendered 5 years earlier. Her son, who had once been bashful and obedient, he was a good boy, was now forceful and at times very cruel. When he turned 12, he found a kindred spirit in a boy who did odd jobs around the area. So after bonding over their shared love of self-harm, they went on to experiment with what I consider weird activities like drinking their own urine and eating their own poop. Yeah. It was around the same time that his obsession with young boys began to dominate his life. And he would spend so much of his time at public bathhouses where he would watch the people undress for hours on end. So at the age of 20, Albert moved to New York where he worked as a male prostitute, which would be his main source of income for the next 8 long years. He didn't want to do it, but he kind of had to earn money. So with his 30s fast approaching, Albert's mum proclaimed that the time had come for him to settle down, and she introduced her son to this woman that she had chosen to be his bride. Before he knew it, he was a married man, and he seemed happy with his new bride. Albert and his wife, they went on to have 6 children, and he supported his family by taking up a job as a house painter. But in reality, this family man, he was leading a horrid double life. He would go out and he would prowl the streets in search of boys. And he liked the boys that were under the age of 6. Albert, he visited a wax museum that featured an artist's renderings of different stages of human anatomy. And one particular piece that grabbed his attention was a replica of a bisected penis. I'm going to put up the picture. It is very gross. Albert was mesmerized by the sight, and he became obsessed with the concept of sexual mutilation in all of its forms. It was in that moment that a monster was born. So in 1903, Albert, who had always managed to fly just under police radar, was arrested for the very first time. It wasn't an essay crime though, rather a charge of grand larceny. So for his crime, he was sent to the infamous Sing Sing prison in New York. And when he was released after an extended stay, he went right back to his old ways, prowling the streets, looking for little boys, being a gross, horrible person. So in 1910, the now 40-year-old Albert met a 19-year-old mentally challenged man called Thomas Kedden. Though not as young as Albert liked, the teenager's compliant personality made him a perfect victim. It was said that this teenager also shared an interest in mutilation and torture, so they often bonded over this common interest. But despite Albert's claims that they had a consensual relationship, it was later revealed that Albert had kept the boy prisoner in an old abandoned farmhouse where he was sadly essayed and tortured for days on end. So after discovering that essay and humiliation were no longer satisfying his needs, Albert decided to take things to a new level. Using a scalpel, Albert severed Thomas Kedden's penis in the hopes of recreating what he had seen at that museum. I know. After this, Albert knew that he couldn't let this teenager go, so he came up with a plan in which he would kill Thomas, dismember his body, and keep the parts as souvenirs of basically their time together. He was alive when he had his penis cut in half. That poor kid. So there he wanted to follow through with the idea. He thought better of it after coming to the realization that the remains would rapidly break down in the summer heat, resulting in an overwhelming stench of decomposition that might lead authorities to his doorstep. So instead, Albert disinfected Thomas's mutilated penis, wrapped the bloody stump in a handkerchief, and freed him with a parting kiss on the lips. But before sending him on his way, he handed the boy $10, which was presumably his way of apologizing. So while Albert would stand by that version of events that I just said, the outcome seems unlikely because Thomas was never actually seen or heard from again. It is highly likely that Albert killed and got rid of the body in some sort of way. In 1917, Albert's wife left him for a handyman who had been renting a room in their home, and on her way out, she had taken everything that she could carry. But for some reason, she had voluntarily left her kids with their dad. What was even more surprising was that he was, by all accounts, a really loving parent who never abused his kids at all. His kids later say that he was a freaking awesome dad. So it's very confusing. Yeah. Much like his mother before him, Albert said that he was hearing voices, like on and off throughout his life, and he said the voices would berate him. So by the time he reached middle age, he was resorting to self-harm on a daily basis to basically release the pent-up frustrations that threatened to consume his life. And one of his favorite gross things to do was to beat himself with a paddle that was studded with nails. He would even get his own kids to paddle him until he bled. And because the kids were used to their dad being weird and being strange, they kind of like just went along with it, like, you know, that's just dad. Over time, Albert's appetite for pain became all-consuming, and he freely admitted that he enjoyed dousing a bit of wool with lighter fluid and inserting it into his Rectum. That's right. Once it was securely in place, he would ignite the wool, burning his anal cavity. I know. He also found inserting needles into his penis and his scrotum arousing. When he was finally arrested for his crimes against children, x-rays revealed the presence of 29 sewing needles and straight pins that had been embedded into his groin. To add to the long list of Albert's perversions, he had also acquired a taste for raw meat. It was becoming more evident with each passing day that he had given up even attempting to try to, be normal, whatever that is. At one point, while visiting his hometown of Washington, D.C., Albert stabbed a mentally challenged boy in an unprovoked attack. Once again, he got away with no one the wiser, because Albert was very careful to prey upon those who were less likely to be believed if it came down to their word against his. His urges, they were growing stronger and stronger by the day. He had a collection of what he called his implements of hell. These tools of his trade included, oh my god, this guy. There was a meat cleaver, a butcher's knife, a handsaw, just like that kind of stuff. With everything in place, all he needed was his victims. So in July of 1924, Albert attempted to abduct 8-year-old Beatrice Keel from her parents' farm in Staten Island. In a well-thought-out ruse, he had offered to pay the youngster to help him pick rhubarb. Rhubarb is really yummy. I love rhubarb and custard. Yum. Unaware that she was in the presence of pure evil, she agreed to go. Fortunately, as he was leading the little girl away, her mum just happened to look out the window just in time to see them walking into the distance, hand in hand. And her mum jumps up. She races out the door. She grabbed her daughter, and that's when she chased Albert away. She just saved her daughter's life from horrible and despicable acts that he was probably going to commit on her. Albert actually returned to the same farm later that night, and he hid in their barn. But he was caught by the little girl's dad, and he threatened Albert and chased him away. It was only later on, when they saw his face on the front page of the newspaper, that they realized just how close they had come to losing their little girl to this monster. Albert started to tell anyone who would listen that God was instructing him to torture and mutilate the innocent, and he insisted that as the chosen one, he had no other choice than to comply with God's wishes. So in his sick mind, he was doing the Lord's work, and therefore should be allowed to continue his mission. What an absolute freak. Seriously. There was a little neighbor boy called Cyril Quinn that Albert, he essayed him on a regular. Whenever he saw him, he would get this little boy. And one day Albert was out walking and he saw Cyril. He was playing on the sidewalk with another kid. So Albert invited these two kids over to his house for some sandwiches and soda. They went with him and they ate the sandwiches and they drank the sodas. Then, when they were finished, Albert encouraged them to wrestle on his bed while he watched and acted as referee, because he's a creep. So while the boys were playing and wrestling, Albert's torture tools that were hidden under his mattress, they actually fell out onto the floor. The boys, they see it and they freak out, and they got the hell out of there. They ran. When Albert was finally taken into custody years later, he actually confessed that he had intended fully to torture, mutilate, and consume young Cyril that day. Although not yet legally divorced from his first wife, Albert got married again in 1930, but the marriage only lasted a week. She thought that he was a weird dude because he ate raw meat and tortured himself. So not long afterwards, Albert was arrested for sending obscene letters to a woman who had advertised her maid services in a local trade paper. But instead of going to jail, he was committed to a psychiatric hospital for observation. So he was like writing some pretty obscene shit. Back in 1928, Albert had answered an ad that had been placed in the newspaper by 18-year-old Edward Budd, who was looking for work as a farmhand. So seizing the moment, Albert had made arrangements to meet this boy at his house in Manhattan. Flashing money around and bragging that he was a well-to-do homeowner in need of a labourer, Albert had no trouble gaining the family's trust. So he met the entire family that lived in the home. But what the parents of this boy didn't know was that he had every intention of abducting their 18-year-old son and mutilating him. Albert had hired Edward on the spot, along with his friend Willie, who he saw as like a bonus rather than a bother. And he told the boys that he would pick them up later in the week to start work. But it turned out Albert couldn't make it, so he had to reschedule. When Albert eventually returned, he met Edward's little sister Grace. And as soon as he laid eyes on this cute little 10-year-old, he forgot all about her teenage brother. Now, he only wanted the girl and knew that he would have her at any cost, because this dude does not give up. So young and innocent, Grace was charmed by the attention that she received from her brother's would-be employer. Albert was good at lying, and he told the family that he had a young niece and that it was her birthday. He said that he planned to go to her birthday party later that afternoon. He asked if Grace would like to go to this party, and that there would be loads of yummy treats and cake. So in a decision that would haunt them for the rest of their lives, Grace's parents had seen no harm in the offer, and they agreed to let their little girl go with him. As they watched her leave, they hadn't known that they were gazing upon their daughter for the very last time. 6 years would pass before the Budd family found out what had happened to their little girl. The information they had waited so long to receive came in the form of a rambling letter written by her killer. The madman's writings described the multiple acts of cannibalism that he had inflicted upon their daughter. He also made them aware of the fact that he had planned on eating her from the moment he met her. By his own admission, after taking her from her home, instead of going to this birthday party, as promised, he had watched the child pick wildflowers before retreating into an empty flop house. Once he was inside, he took off all of his clothing, got naked. He said it was to avoid getting them stained with blood. And he had gone to the window and he had called this little girl inside. So she came in and she was shocked by the sight of this naked man standing before her. She burst into tears and she tried to run for the door. But Albert, he went after her and he grabbed her. I don't want to do this. He tore off her dress and he choked her to death. Once the deed was done, he had gleefully chopped her little body into pieces. In a sickening footnote, he added that he had feasted on her roasted remains for 9 days. My God. Though the writer of the disturbing account hadn't revealed his true name, the Budd family, they knew him all too well. When they turned the letter over to the police, they told them in no uncertain terms that the sickening words were those of the supposedly rich farmer who had targeted them through the want ads. So getting straight to work, detectives discovered that the envelope that had contained the letter boasted a unique emblem that was traced to a janitor who was living in a rundown rooming house. So when they went to talk to him, they learned that he had moved out and he went by the name of Albert Fish. In a rare stroke of luck, the landlady informed authorities that she was holding a check for the former tenant who was due to pick it up at any time. Knowing a golden opportunity when they saw it, the police waited patiently for their one and only person of interest to make his move. Sure enough, Albert showed up at the rooming house, where he was swarmed by law enforcement. When asked to accompany them to the station for questioning, he agreed before pulling out a razor blade. Yeah, and he threatened the cops. So he's waving this thing around. He's threatening to cut anyone who comes close to him. But despite his feeble attempt to escape capture, officers, they were able to disarm him and they took him in for questioning. So during the interrogation, Albert never once tried to deny his role in Grace Budd's death. Instead, he confessed to the police about his original plan to kill her older brother, Edward. So after his arrest, the police were able to link him to the deaths of both Francis McDonnell and Billy Gaffney. By the end of his interrogation, he had admitted to killing a 9-year-old boy in 1924 and a 4-year-old in 1927. Oh, this guy. So without showing a shred of remorse, he had offered details of how he had tortured and mutilated these kids before putting them out of their misery. As a finishing touch, he told of how much he had enjoyed drinking their blood and eating their flesh in the aftermath. Like I said, he was a very disturbed man. I said it at the beginning. Albert Fish went to trial for killing Grace Budd on March the 11th, 1935 in White Plains, New York, and the trial went on for 10 days, during which Albert pleaded insanity. He told the courts that he heard voices from God, and God was telling him to kill these children, and several psychiatrists at his trial testified about his sexual fetishes, which included cannibalism, the eating of feces, and drinking his own urine. So while no one on the jury dared argue that he was insane, they all still believed that he deserved to be executed for what he had done to these children. And at the end of his trial, the jury found Albert Fish legally sane and also guilty. He was sentenced to death by electrocution, and less than a year after his trial, on January the 16th, 1936, the then 65-year-old Albert sat down in the electric chair at Sing Sing. He was only 65, but he looks like 85. He was pronounced dead 3 minutes later. Good. It is said that his last words were, "I don't even know where I am." Okay. Although no charges were filed in the other cases, it was widely believed that Albert Fish was responsible for the torture killings of at least 5 other children between the years 1926 and 1932. Albert Fish was known as both the Werewolf of Wysteria and the Brooklyn Vampire. Albert Fish has left a trail of terror that still lingers in the minds of many, many people. He was responsible for some pretty freaking gruesome crimes and was finally apprehended and brought to justice in the early 20th century. But well, that's all well and good, but these kids still had to die. It's just sad. They didn't get to live a life. Many have wondered where he was buried after his execution, because his remains are not in a publicly accessible location. as is often the case with individuals who commit such atrocious acts. The burial locations of such figures are usually kept undisclosed to prevent vandalism and to avoid creating like a place of morbid curiosity or admiration for those fascinated by criminals and their deeds. To conclude, Albert Fish's burial site, it still remains undisclosed and largely forgotten, a testament to society's preference to remember the victims rather than glorify the heinous criminals. With someone as horrible as him, one has to wonder if he was born to be a killer, or did his circumstances turn him evil? Like most serial killers, it seems to be a little of both nurture and nature. He said that he killed hundreds of kids. Like, he actually said that. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's story. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below, and please don't forget to hit the like button, turn on the notifications button, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more of my videos. Also, if you are listening via my podcast and would like to see the video, you can find me on YouTube. Yeah, YouTube is like my second home. My name on YouTube is Kate Sharon True Crime. Used to be Crime Mystery Mayhem. I've changed it. Oh, also, I am officially fully monetized. So you might have noticed, like, there's a couple of ads that pop up. So watch the ad. Get me paid. I think I get like 2 cents for each person who watches the video. Help us out. I got to get that new camera, right? Because I am not enjoying the quality of my videos. Like, I try so hard to deliver a good video. I just need a decent camera. So I am saving. What else was I going to say? Blah, blah, blah. I started an OnlyFans account. Not for that sort of thing. You know what I mean. Because I did notice there's a lot of stuff on OnlyFans that's a little bit risque. And I've set up a fundraiser on my OnlyFans account. So I'll put a link to my OnlyFans account. I said OnlyFans account like 3 times. OnlyFans account. Feel free to please go to my account, find my fundraiser. It should be near the top. And help me out. Because the fundraiser is for a camera. So I can film quality videos, because now that I'm fully monetized, I want to be able to deliver really good videos, and quality is important, and get a good microphone and stuff like that. But I'm a single mum, so please do head over to my OnlyFans account. Even if you just chuck in $5, like, it'll build, and then I'll be able to get my camera, because the camera is $3,500 and then I got to get like the tripod and the microphone and blah 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 blah. So yeah, I don't say blah blah blah. Where did I get that from? What movie? Yeah, it's a good movie. I don't say blah 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 blah. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Please check out my OnlyFans account. Find the fundraiser. It's for a good cause. We get to watch better videos, right? Nobody wants to watch these, like, because like my face is all like, it looks like it's all distorted and shit. It's so annoying. And it's because I'm filming on my phone, and because I actually have a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, which is a damn good phone, but because I have to press that button to turn the camera around, it's only filming me with one lens, so it's not actually using like the awesomeness of the camera's awesomeness. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying, eh? So to turn it around to be able to see my transcript, because I follow a transcript, yeah, it doesn't use all of the lenses. So I've got a bunch of lenses on my phone because I've got the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, but because I have to swing my phone around, it only uses one of my lenses. I'm sure you understand. But yeah, OnlyFans account, fundraiser, please help me out. Are there any rich people out there who can get me a camera? Oh my god, there's a spider. Okay, I'm gonna leave the basement now. Yeah, I told you guys I'm back in the basement. Yeah. Okay, have a wonderful day, guys. Please do check out my fundraiser because it would really help me out. I really want to start filming like better quality footage. Cell phones, they do the job, but it's not as good. I'm sure you guys understand. I'm out. Bye.